This is AI Goes to College, a new podcast about artificial intelligence in higher education and beyond.
Welcome to the third episode of AI Goes to College. This is a podcast about the intersection of artificial intelligence and higher education. I'm your host, Professor Sarah Stewart, and today we have a really special guest. Dr. Kevin Yee joins us from the University of Central Florida, and we're going to talk today about integrity and artificial intelligence. We're going to talk about cheating, about writing essays with ChatGPT, and about detection services, among other things. So thank you for joining us, Kevin.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So I'd like to give some background here. You have so much experience, so I'm going to read from your bio. Kevin has a PhD from UC Irvine and has been working in educational development since 2004. He's held positions at Duke, Pomona College, University of Iowa, including UCF. He's been at the forefront of integrating AI into the classroom, serving as the director of UCF's Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning, co-authoring books on the topic, and serving as co-founder and organizer of the hugely successful Teaching and Learning with AI conference in Orlando. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. This is an exciting topic, and I'm glad that you're reaching out, trying to learn more, as are we all.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we need a little help over here. So I know that I have your book. I attended the conference a few weeks ago. You have a couple of books on teaching with AI. And so I wanted you to show us show us the books and kind of how they're different and how they're similar. Because
Sure.
I know they definitely help us with solutions. And I'm just going to move this over. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So what I've got are books that are similarly designed, but one has got a yellow cover and one has got a blue cover. The one you mentioned that was given out this year was the one with the blue cover, AI Hacks for Educators. And it's really designed to help faculty think about using AI to do their work as teachers, to do their work as faculty members, and ways that makes their life better. And that's why we use the word hacks, this modern term of tips and tricks, really. The earlier book is called 60 Plus ChatGPT Assignments to Use in Your Classroom Today. And it was actually the book we gave out at the first version of our AI conference, Teach with AI conference. It was not announced or anything. It was sort of a giveaway they got at the end. And its purpose is to give faculty ideas about ways to alter assignments now that AI is here and AI is here to stay. So we can't just give assignments the old-fashioned way. And so this gives them, a bunch of different ideas from different disciplines that it's meant to be super practical and pragmatic rather than theoretical at all.
Well, I appreciate it. I have this one, and then from the last conference, I have the other one in my office, and they've been very helpful.
Good. I appreciate that. The conference tries to be a little bit different from other conferences in that it's really a practitioners conference or a sharing conference. Now, I guess you could make the argument that any giving out of research is sharing, but ours is not research. It's about practice. It came from recognizing that, as clever as we think we are, there's no way we're going to be able to solve all the problems and know all the workarounds about AI and teaching. So this was our attempt to crowdsource it. Like, how do we get information from what everyone else is doing and just share these little stories with each other? So giving them a giveaway in the form of this book was also meant to be sort of value added. Like, the conference is really zeroed in, dialed in, and trying to be useful as opposed to interesting, if that makes sense. Sometimes as academics, we attend conferences and they're academically stimulating and interesting, and I love that, but that's not what this is. This is, boots to the ground, notes on exactly what I'm going to do when I get back to the office, etc. So it's very practical, and the books grew out of that idea of practical expert examples.
Yeah, and I noticed that's kind of how the conference was as well. So let's focus on the conference. Like, kind of where did that come from? It was so successful. I saw it was written up in the Chronicle of Higher Ed this last conference, so that's wonderful. How are you feeling about it now that we're 2 weeks out?
Very positive. We had a great response in our first version of the conference, which was just about a year ago, a little bit less than a year actually. And this one improved on our numbers there. So we're feeling very positive. We're hearing positive feedback from people as well. I think for a lot of people, this feels like a completely different conference experience where they are used to seeing research presentations and having to go that sort of last mile in their mind about what does that mean for me and how do I actually translate that into teaching for me. Whereas from the beginning to end, our call for papers specified that we're looking for frontline practitioners. Like we want to hear the stories about what you're doing in response to the AI stimulus, the AI possibilities. And sometimes I call them opportunities and threats at the same time. And that was the prompt that we put out there. And in that first version of the conference, which was September 2023, first of all, we had about 500 people attend. So just successful right out of the gate. That's a big number for a first year conference. About 120 presentations. And the majority, almost the vast majority of them were ways to lean in to AI. The people coming to this were not so interested in how do I fight? Well, some of them were, I guess. How do I fight this? How do I continue assigning essays the way I've been assigning them? But the presentations that were given were really about recognizing AI is here to stay, and we have to do some things differently. So just to finish the idea of where we've been into the second year, we doubled in size for the presentations. So we're over 200 presentations this time. And over 800 people attending. So that's a big, steep curve there that we climbed in less than a year. And so we're hoping our third version of it will be equally successful, if not even a few more people.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I was at the first one and it was really well attended, but this one was, quite a hit as well.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just looking at your PowerPoint this morning, your introduction message to the conference this time. And it seemed like the overall message that I heard from a lot of presenters, the keynotes as well, is basically that AI is here to stay. And that we just need to learn the tools. So at this point, we just need to kind of start learning. It's not going away. Can you tell listeners a little bit more about that? A little bit more, maybe tell us a little bit about your presentation?
Sure. So this presentation, which I've honed over a few different instances of being asked to talk about AI, the status of where AI is, and what teaching looks like in the AI era. As I mentioned, is often framed with the title of opportunities and challenges. And I actually start with the challenges because AI represents such a seismic shift in what's possible for students that simply giving our assignments the way we give them now, especially essay assignments, isn't going to work. So we might think that I can detect it by gut feeling if a student turns in an AI-generated assignment. And for some disciplines, that's probably true, especially depending on the level. But for others, that's not true, right? If you're doing a basic literature class and the essay assignment's about Hamlet, it's going to give a great essay that you will not be able to detect. So I'll maybe give you the summarized version of this, and you can ask for further details if desired. But if you look at it, it boils down to we can't really detect it. We can't really prevent it because these are tools they use at home, and it's a take-home essay, so you can't prevent it. There's also some evidence that the students cannot be convinced to skip it. They cannot be convinced so there's a survey from about a year ago, a national survey, where about 50% of students said that they would use AI tools for writing, even when told not to by the instructor. So that's a significant number that I think means that we cannot just bury our heads and pretend that this technology does not exist. And we need to recognize the technology is getting better and better and better. And so the days, even if you can today have that gut feeling that this was AI generated, I don't think that's going to be true forever. This is so what it really means is that I'll just put it polemically, the take-home essay, at least the way we've done it, may be dead. That there's real danger in giving students the essay the way we've always done it, because we're assuming that they're actually doing the pieces of work, when in fact they're going to ask AI to do the pieces of work that are involved in making an essay. So if we can't fight it, if you can't neutralize it, just to give the other half of the talk, we have to find ways to lean in. We have to recognize that the future of work has AI in it. Like, you're not going to go to some paralegal office where you're put to work as a paralegal and they're told, don't use AI in any part of your job. There will be ways that you make your job faster by using AI. So college needs to recognize that, and college education needs to prepare them for the workplaces that are going to be out there that do have AI as an option as part of that workflow. And we need to figure out what that looks like in each one of our disciplines and then teach toward that. Change the assignments to be more about, well, go ahead and use AI. Start with AI. These are the parts you do with AI. And then really it boils down to most of these assignments are generate an AI output and then do something with it. That's where we need to go with our assignments, is where the students are asked to generate the AI output. Then they improve it. They evaluate it for bias. They make it twice as long. They scour it for mistakes, factual mistakes that it makes. AI is very good at certain things, but humans are better at others. And so we need to get more specific. And I have specifics if you want to talk about that, about which domains are better for the AI and which domains are better for the humans. And that's what the future of assignments really looks like.
Yeah, I do want to talk about specifics in a minute. And I also have some favorites, favorite presenters and ideas, because it was such a cool gathering of frontline instructors who are doing this and experimenting with it. And so, yeah, I got a lot of interesting examples for teaching. But first, let's take a step back, because I noticed that your PhD is in German literature and that you teach classes on pop culture. You assign cultural analyses for your students and things like that. So a lot of writing, it sounds like. So just tell me a little bit about your background and why you're interested in this, because I know there are some teachers who are assigning writing and they really are resistant to this. They want to know that we are going to be teaching writing the same way we used to. So you have kind of a background in teaching this. How did you come to wanting to talk about AI in education?
Well, you just asked about 3 or 4 different questions.
I did.
So I'll see if I can circle back to all of them, but keep me honest on that and let me know which ones I didn't get. I'm going to answer your most recent question first, or the last part posed first, which is how I got interested, or why I got interested in this. So like everyone else in November 2022, I went about my teaching experience feeling like, okay, that COVID thing is finally over and people are finally back on campus and things are finally getting back to normal. Except that Christmas break, we all watched the news with horror as ChatGPT went viral in November and December of 2022. And I work in a teaching center where we frequently feel it's our job to look at new technologies and help faculty understand, this is something you should look at, or this is one you shouldn't bother with, et cetera. And I by playing with ChatGPT, when I first got an account in December of 2022, I recognized this is horrifying for anyone who assigns writing, because it generates complete sentences. It doesn't make grammatical errors or sentence and spelling errors, which ironically is one of the ways you can tell, actually, that ChatGPT has made the thing rather than a student. But we knew that we had to get some resources in place for faculty right away, because faculty turn to a teaching center for advice, like, hey, this new technology is here and the students are cheating on it all of a sudden. What do we do about it? Mm-hmm. So over that Christmas break, we stood up a web page that offered faculty some, again, pragmatic choices. If you want to try to fight it or neutralize it, especially that was our message at the beginning, because we knew that was going to be a lot of faculty members' starting point, is how do I stop this? And there are a couple of ways that kind of work, super detailed prompts, writing prompts that depend on class conversations that ChatGPT knows nothing about.
Right.
So just to give one example of 30 or so that landed on our webpage. And then 30 or so ideas for, how to lean in. How do I make this a part of the assignments in the future. And so that really was the beginnings of what became that first book, the ChatGPT assignments. Was 15 or so of those were on our website for our faculty to start thinking about, what do we do about this? So that's really the how we got interested part, is out of necessity, working in a teaching center. That's it's a really disruptive thing in education.
Yeah.
It changes a lot. You can't just give your assignments the way you've done before. They'll cheat.
Right.
You can tell them not to cheat. They're still going to cheat.
Mm-hmm.
So in many ways, we need to stop thinking of it as cheating, right? It's more like the assistance continuum. So if you want to think about, people made comparisons to the calculator, and that's not totally wrong, although the calculator doesn't completely solve the problem the way you still have to know how to use a calculator, whereas ChatGPT just does the whole thing for you. But calculator, spell check, Grammarly, right? Grammarly, we'll have to come back to Grammarly when we're talking about detection, but Grammarly is a tool and spell check is a tool. Most of us would not say that's cheating. Right. So, we need to maybe shift to where we view the emphasis is on writing process, not the writing product. Mm-hmm. Because the writing product in the future, especially, is going to be AI plus human. That's kind of what I was trying to say about the workplace of the future too, is, the workplace in the future, if not today, has AI in it. Mm-hmm. And we need to think about how our students can not just use AI and generate AI, they need to be better than AI. Mm-hmm. Let me put that a different way. If your job can be replaced by AI, you probably deserve to have your job replaced by AI. Because if AI could do it, why would they pay a person to do it?
Right.
It's all of our jobs in the future to be better than the AI output. And right. that's our jobs at the college level, I think, is to show them, here's how you use AI to create an output. Here's how you improve it. Here's how you take it further. So I think writing looks different now. Writing is not composing. It's not drafting. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it is. Maybe there's some symbiotic process with the AI bots where I do some drafting, it does some drafting, we do some comparing. No one's entirely sure what the writing processes will look like in the future. Just that I think it's foolhardy to say we got to shut AI out completely.
Yeah. Yeah, my next question was going to be specifically for my colleagues, like in the English department, assigning papers. But I think this is for every department probably. Do we need to revisit like learning outcomes? Like, is that something, especially with writing? Like, are we teaching something different now?
Yes, we do need to revisit learning outcomes. In fact, I suggest you start with a specific path here, where the learning outcome examination goes through the idea of an essay. So I'm from humanities as well. Let's talk in the humanities context, and people can make a bridge in their mind about how their discipline is different. But if you were to ask those of us who assign essays, why are you assigning an essay? We'd answer with some version of it measures critical thinking. It's the only kind of instrument that measures what critical thinking looks like in my discipline. And yet, if you've ever tried to establish a definition of critical thinking, like on a general education committee with other colleagues around the campus, mm-hmm. we don't all agree on what critical thinking is, right? It's specific to discipline. And in fact, even within discipline, we might have different ideas for what I want to focus on for the critical thinking part of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what I think we need to do first is find I'm going to call them sort of sub-competencies of writing an essay. So when I said critical thinking, was that I want them to be able to write an outline? Was it because I want them to be able to brainstorm a topic? Was it because I wanted them to remix different creative things and come up with a thesis that is original and brand new, mm-hmm. And argumentative at the same time? Let's just throw all of the pieces mm-hmm. of the kitchen sink in there. Am I asking, is one of the sub bullets or subcategories is being able to, create that outline and then turn it into a detailed outline, turn that into paragraphs with topic sentences, be able to connect evidence to those sub claims, right? These are all sub things mm-hmm. that are part of critical thinking and writing an essay. Well, guess what? About half of the ones I just listed are things that AI can do pretty well.
Including synthesis, right?
It's not as good as synthesis as someone who's raised and doing essays for the last 40 years without, I'm older than that, but since in school, since since doing it the old-fashioned way, I think I'm still better at synthesis than the AI is.
Mm-hmm.
We'll need to come back to the idea of students in 10 years, however, who have only been raised with AI. That's a completely different subject. But let's finish this thought. Half of those things AI can do. So it can do outlining. It can do some version of brainstorming. It's not great at creative remixed theses that are also argumentative. So let's carve that aside as something that we brainstorm with it, we outline with it, and then maybe human activity now comes in the remixing and the turning it into something that is an argumentative thesis for us. It's good at I said outlining. It's good at some version of first draft. It's definitely good at topic sentences, but it's not good at final draft. It's not good at connecting evidence very clearly to the argumentative points, and it certainly doesn't. When you write an essay, especially those of us who've been doing it for years and years and can do so at a fairly high level, you almost make discoveries, conclusion type discoveries in the process of writing that paragraph. Right. AI is never going to do that. And so we need to evolve how, what that looks like in the modern era where AI has done the first draft. How do I still turn that into something more than the sum of its parts, which is what critical thinking truly looks like when you're well trained in it. Mm-hmm. I think I've missed the point in this, but essay. So how to change the essay assignments.
Yeah, how to change them. And then, I asked about learning outcomes, but I think there's maybe an alternative in this, in that, this has been suggested, I know at the conferences and in our department as well, is preventing AI generation altogether. And that would, mostly the solution is, okay, do the writing in class, the old fashioned way with proctored writing.
Yes.
Are there any other ideas?
A top of mind technological fix is to ask the students to, this one leans in, it's not preventing it. It's asking students to turn track changes on to Microsoft Word to an AI generated output that they're fixing. So that's related to what you've said. If you tell them the assignment is, write it yourself, and it's a take-home assignment, like in a fully online class or something, or any other version of take-home, there is no, I don't see how you prevent it. You can't monitor that they're using it. So unless it's face-to-face, and when they, face-to-face and doing in-class writing in real time. Mm-hmm. So yes, that exists, but like many technologies, it has some downsides to it. Chief among them is our equity issues. Yeah. So let's examine this. So some students will claim, if you ask them, I can type faster than I can handwrite, which as a teaching and learning expert is actually the point. You're supposed to stop and think about, when note taking, you're supposed to stop and think about things, right. not just capture every word. Some will say I wasn't taught penmanship, which is probably true, actually. Many of them don't have that skill from grammar school. So they're going to be slower at all of that than someone who did have that upbringing and education. So those with a private education might still have had penmanship lessons. They would be faster at this than those who do otherwise. And I'll point out another big one, neurodivergence. Mm-hmm. So someone in the teaching and learning world, Todd Zakrajsek, is fond of saying that college was built for the risk-taking, fast-talking extrovert. And he's right, especially in our humanities classes. Those are the students we notice the most. We respond to them, we interact with them. And that's not every student. It doesn't even have to be neurodiversity. Just sort of think about this concept of, the fact that some students are going to be better at on-the-spot, drafting and composing than others. Some people are just slow at this, need reflective time. Some of them may compose with classical music in their ears, and you can't do that, in sort of a testing environment. So there are going to be equity issues with it, on top of the fact that it doesn't scale very easily, right? At the University of Central Florida, we have very large classes sometimes in the hundreds that are online classes. They face a difficult challenge here because they have to stay online by nature of the modality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's try to shift disciplines, maybe, if you have an example from a different discipline than writing and communications. But I wanted to try to share a specific instance, maybe a case study, maybe an example from your experience where AI has really posed a significant challenge to integrity in your department, maybe at the college. But maybe we can have an example from a different discipline.
So I've got three, I think, again, top of mind. Two of them are similar to each other, so I'll start with the dissimilar one. Computer science and learning to code, learning to program. There are it's much less clear how exactly you're supposed to detect AI-generated code versus AI-generated sentences. So I'm not sure that programmers have as the same kind of gut feeling that this was AI generated that we might have about that Hamlet essay. So they face a problem. And programming, the way through it is through the fundamentals. So let's make sure we come back to fundamentals in writing too. But fundamentals in coding can only really be done by pretending that the coding isn't there. So that to this day, they teach fundamentals in arithmetic without using calculators, right, in grade school. Calculators come later after you've mastered the fundamentals. What's the version of that look like in college where these are take-home assignments and there's no time given in the face-to-face time to look? Plus, learning arithmetic is 3 weeks or something in third grade. I'm just making that number up. It's some different grade, but whereas learning the code is all semester long. Like it's a different proposition entirely. So that's code. That's the first one. And then the other two that are similar to each other are disciplines where you cannot do what I said earlier about generate an AI output and then do something with it, because the AI output is the thing we're after. And those are foreign languages and English for speakers of other languages, ESOL. So English as a second language, English language learners, and when I'm learning French, learning Spanish, whatever, the output that ChatGPT can give you is already perfect. There's nothing else to comment on it as a language learner. So if I'm tempted as a language learner to just to get the product and turn the whole thing into a transaction, then I can do that, and the teacher won't know. So they face particular headwinds there if it's a fully online class. If it's a face-to-face class, you can, as a foreign language teacher myself, I know that you could do a lot of that practice right there in the room without depending on them doing it at home. So that the at-home stuff, honestly, I'm not sure what I would do, but I might switch back to worksheets filled out by hand. Although they can type it into ChatGPT and get a ChatGPT answer, it's probably just as hard to do that as to actually do the work in your head and handwrite the answer in German. So, but those are the disciplines that I think that face the most uphill. And then the disciplines that are sort of in the middle, a lot of the STEM disciplines fall there, where it's factual in nature. It's not, as we might write an interpretation of Hamlet, you can have a pretty strong original interpretation of Hamlet, and therefore you can have some gut feelings about AI generated text. But if we're talking about, a lab report, it's supposed to be kind of cut and dried and clear and logical. And, apart from the syntactical quirks it might have, like repeating certain words is one of the ways you can detect AI writing. Apart from that, that's going to be a real challenge to know that the student didn't write that. And yet, what's supposed to replace a lab write-up that AI can't fake? Yeah. So I'll use that as a springboard to talk about something else that we can circle back to in different ways. But part of the deal when going back to learning outcomes and figuring out what's really important to me now is after you do that and you cross off the ones that AI is going to do, then you need to match those remaining subcategories, so sub skills, with outputs that AI cannot make today. So a narrated Prezi is an output that AI cannot make for you right now. It can write the script for it, but you still have to perform it.
Right.
And it would sound pretty stilted if it's not just you. A poster like a Glogster. So now we're talking about 2008 technology, digital posters. Different things that are digital products, like many things from digital humanities, actually, that are products they could create, are hard for AI to fake. We have about 6 months left of having them turn in a video selfie or that sort of thing, until those tools get too good to tell. At the moment, the tools still have some uncanny valley to it. like every so often inside their mouth turns white because there's no pixels in there while they're
Oh
talking.
my gosh, yeah.
So we can still tell when AI is video at the moment, but not for long.
I've been doing that a lot lately. I've just kind of just thrown in the towel, and I'm like, okay, our final essay is a video, and you're gonna discuss. Or I've been doing the digital posters, but you're right about the video. Yeah, it's gonna evolve as well.
So let me come back to my own fun classes. So to put some specifics on this, last year I was teaching interpreting Marvel's Avengers. So we would watch the movies in real time and we would interpret them through different interpretive lenses. It was really a course on critical theory, on everything from feminism to post-colonialism and everything in between. And so they would get introduced to these things via readings, and then we see how they apply where our text was Captain America having a fight with somebody else. It's great fun, right? And they had to write essays interpreting, Thanos through both utilitarianism and feminist lenses or something. AI is pretty bad at that. So I haven't converted the essays because it's such a specific topic that AI is not great at it. But my final exam or the final essay has been replaced by oral interviews. I ask what are the equivalent of short answer paragraph questions, except it's done out loud because it's a face-to-face class. They just meet one at a time during the sign-up time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been doing the same thing. And I find that students prepare, or the students who are really, into it, concerned about it, they prepare really well. And they may be using ChatGPT to help them prepare, but they still are having a conversation with me, and they've had to read the output of the AI generation.
And here's my gut check. If a lawyer goes through law school getting assistance from ChatGPT and they can pass the bar, I'm comfortable with that person being my lawyer, right? Because they've been able to pass the bar and they've learned the material. Yes, they learned it with ChatGPT, but here's another comparison people make: Wikipedia, or this is the internet in general, right?
Right.
Those of us who were teaching that long ago, and I was one of them, there was a general freak out on campus that this is it. The students are never going to be able to learn anything anymore. They just get everything they need from Wikipedia and they'll stop paying any attention. And it didn't really happen. And, the professors are no longer scared of Wikipedia the way we were once upon a time. We recognize it's a starting place for students, and many of us use it as a starting place.
Right.
But I think AI is going to be it's going to be a learning tool. And some places are starting to reconceptualize it, recategorize it as a learning companion rather than anything else. So that's maybe a way to think of it, is that it doesn't replace learning. It helps me do my learning better.
Right.
And so the trick is convincing students of that. And that's not so easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm thinking if we are learning the tools as well, and that's a big ask for some faculty.
It is.
Engage with them.
Yeah, it is. So earlier I mentioned that a teaching center like ours views it as our responsibility to vet things. This is not that important. This one is. You should learn this one. Unfortunately, we are now at the point where we are telling faculty that they should be learning multiple things, that they should be, conversant on multiple types of large language models, and probably some image generator models as well, which is a big lift for faculty. And I mentioned earlier on that at the end of 2022, we're all feeling relieved that COVID was finally starting to feel behind us. Return to campus. Well, in many ways, it feels like the year 2020 has never ended, that we're still in crisis and that people are still forced to do, last second adjustments to their course because of all these things we cannot control. First came COVID, then came these lockdowns, then came these this mental health crisis that many students feeling like they need extra flexibility from us as instructors. All of that's still there, except now students have a way to turn in some of our assignments without putting in any effort. It's a real danger to their learning if we do nothing. Right.
Yeah. Well, we're learning to be very agile, right? As instructors, some of us. So yeah, I guess a good segue into the technologies and the plagiarism detectors and things like that. This is a good place to kind of talk about that, because I know that there seem to be kind of different groups. Some are early adopters like me and you, and then some are resistant, but they understand technology and they're using these AI detection services. And then some just want to be back in the classroom totally and like have no technology at all. So let's talk about that middle category who swear by the AI detection, because I know that I do have a lot of colleagues who are using them. And then I go to like conferences like the one that that you just had, and no one uses them. So it's an interesting divide.
Yeah, the early adopters have coalesced around that viewpoint that the AI detectors are flawed. And you heard me mention earlier that we can't reliably detect it, and so let me unpack that a little bit more about what's wrong with the detectors. So faculty have faith in technology when it comes to figuring out writing and academic integrity, largely from 30 years of plagiarism detection. Places like turnitin.com and similar services, which delivers a product that is black and white. Here is where that exact phrase came from, and it's an entire paragraph, and that was published 15 years ago, and you just use it as though you wrote it. That's black and white. It's not black and white with AI detection. AI detection gives you a probability that something was written by a machine. And earlier, I said we got to come back to Grammarly. Grammarly is one of those things, right? So if a student handwrites the thing and then types it up in their own words and then puts it through Grammarly, it's going to come back as probably 100% AI generated. Because Grammarly does certain things. It has certain cadences to the way it changes sentences around that these detectors are built for.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing to distrust about the detectors is that they are just as much a black box as the LLMs to begin with. Nobody knows exactly how this LLM was trained or what the guardrails are, right? So let me explain guardrails here real quick. A couple of months ago, Gemini realized that if you ask for an image of a classroom of college students, they were all white. So they put some guardrails in place to guarantee that there would be some diversity in their AI output, which led, unfortunately, to some images like Nazi soldiers being black or being Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
It would cause a minor stir on the internet when it happened, but it was well-meaning because of these guardrails. My point is that all of that is a black box. We don't know what the LLMs are doing under the hood, nor do we know what the detectors are doing under the hood. So there's no real sense of this one is a trustworthy one and this one is not. But the real meat of the objection are the false positives and the false negatives. So there have been studies done that, and the numbers vary wildly. So on the one end, it's 1% of cases are false negative or false positive. More often, the studies are things like 17% are false negative or false positive. But as the name implies, a false positive would mean I wrote it as a human and it says it's AI generated.
Mm-hmm.
And a false negative would be that it says it's not AI generated, but it was.
Right.
So the student got away with it. And there have been documented cases, usually in things like news articles rather than rigorous studies, but documented cases of, for sure, it being human generated and coming back as 100% machine. So you can't trust these numbers that come out of these detectors. Mm-hmm. It looks like a sure thing. 100% is very misleading because it's a black box and it gives false negatives and it gives false positives. And so there's an equity problem built into that as well. Like we can't just go around, even if the thing were 99% correct in a class of 400, now you've got, 4 students who there's a miscarriage of justice. They're given an F for the semester or the grade maybe, and they didn't do anything wrong. And we're doing it on the basis of technology, and that seems like it's too risky to rely on.
Yeah. Yeah. With Grammarly, that's interesting, but also with language. So and translation, right? That can be a huge problem. So a student who is relying on a translation service so that they can do a paper in the humanities, that can be a problem as well.
Well, right. But you're making me think about one of the upsides of artificial intelligence, which is perfecting of English for those who are not native speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So this is probably more common or more of a problem, I think, perhaps in graduate school than in undergraduate education. But in graduate education, often we have international students for whom English is not their first language. They're not totally fluent. And AI is unlikely to write at their level of sophistication for most of those topics.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing actual research and discovering of new knowledge. But AI can help improve the phrasing of it as an essay. And
Mm-hmm.
so, one of the things I'm watching is that, I think as an entire discipline, we need to figure out what's the acceptable amount of this stuff for publications.
Mm-hmm.
Because some journals and funding agencies are taking a hard line, saying none at all. Others are saying you must disclose it and disclose how much. One of the let me see if I can figure out exactly where this comes from. It comes from I don't have the website in front of me. Okay, never mind. There's a website that's tracking large language model usage in publications. So
Mm-hmm.
professors are doing it too.
Yeah.
The same way students are doing it. So, that's one of the reasons I think it's human nature. If you have this shortcut available to you, it's going to be really hard
Mm-hmm.
to not have it do it. If the nature of the assignment is just transactional. So I mentioned earlier, we want to make our assignments more about process than transaction, more about process than final product.
Right. Yeah, that's what I've been doing recently as well, is please show me. And sometimes I'm getting away from critical analysis and more authentic voice, like with my film class. Like, I want to hear your opinion, your unique viewing experience. Tell me more about it. And then we're kind of getting away from talking about sound and editing. And because, I'm getting the same responses over and over again that feel very AI generated. So, and I know that's something like you were mentioning with a lab, you want it to be just straightforward, but in an English class and in a film class, sometimes, you can say, well, you can write about your personal experience. You can write about your opinions on this. But yeah, so definitely focusing more on the process rather than the product. Do you have a specific, and you probably have several in your books, but a specific kind of assignment that's like that, where you kind of you show the steps and students show the steps of their work?
Well, the simple one that I've actually half referred to twice now is that track changes idea after an AI output has been created. So the reason I default to this one is that if you simply make the assignment, find out what AI thinks and now give me a real reaction, your own human reaction to it, without track changes, they can also use AI to do the human part too.
Mm-hmm.
And some students will. Like if you look at the national reasons for why students cheat, half of them line up with AI's availability. I don't have time. Everyone else is doing it. I'm going to fail if I don't, do some sort of cheating here. All of them are reasons why they would use AI. That's why if it's going to be turned in digitally, the only one that I can grab that I know for sure will be track changes.
Mm-hmm.
The nature of the assignment, though, so I have to look at some specifics because you asked me that
Mm-hmm.
on the spot here. Okay, so generating a thesis, having it generate 5 or 10 or 15 theses to a certain topic, and then narrowing the thesis with certain follow-up questions is a version of teaching prompt engineering to your students. So one of the things we haven't been saying here, but it's been in the background the whole time, is to be effective users of AI in that workplace of the future, they have to know prompt engineering more than just what comes top of mind.
Yeah.
Because top of mind, again, you don't need a specialist for that.
Right.
Our students who are getting hired in workplaces of the future are being hired because they're specialists in prompt engineering, specifically for, chip manufacturing, that they also learned in analog ways.
Right.
So you would need to make assignments that enforce the nature of the prompt engineering, so that they either start with something generic and then use that answer that's generated to ask something more specific and narrow it down. that sort of back and forth conversation goes a long way to helping students understand the power of AI. Because a lot of students just use it to make poems and song lyrics, but
Mm-hmm.
and others use it to just turn in assignments, but they don't actually explore it and learn, the ways it can become powerful for them.
Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, that's an argument to dig into it more. Is that, I mean, I came away from the conference thinking that, wow, I need to be more creative in my prompt engineering. It's not nearly, I'm not doing nearly enough to get what I need out of it for my role and for the tasks, like the daily tasks.
So I'll
Um,
give you a specific example of that real quick before we move on
yeah.
to the next one. So early on, I heard a hilarious comparison that ChatGPT's writing is voiceless, um, like that of a 50-year-old compliance lawyer, which is funny. And I always have to apologize to the lawyers in the audience when I make that joke. But I've realized over time that that's what it does if you don't give it a good prompt. If you give it a basic prompt that is just, write about Hamlet's relationship with his mother, whatever, that's what you get, compliance lawyer.
Mhm.
If you start your prompt by telling the AI to sort of role play, right, as, you're a graduate student specializing in this one thing,
Mhm.
um, and you have this one perspective which is kind of out there in the theories, then you're not going to get 50-year-old compliance lawyer. It will have voice.
Right.
So learning to write with voice through the AI is not many people are talking about that, but I think that's where writing is going to go eventually. Like I don't know that we'll be composing things from scratch anymore.
Right. So we're kind of like cyborgs, right? Cyborg writers, that we have an almost, I don't know if you've read the article by Dr. Sarah Eaton about the post-plagiarism era, and she talks a lot about that neural implants and having, if we are to imagine our future, because you talked earlier about, what does the student look like 10 years in the future who's been raised on AI? But I think that's an interesting thing to explore, except that right now, what would you say to let's just say, again, a writing instructor, because you did mention fundamentals of writing, right? What about that? They're making the argument that, well, a student needs to learn how to write word by word, line by line. Do we really need to teach the fundamentals of writing?
It's an open question that's not fully finalized in my mind. So here's the way I normally approach this question about fundamentals. It's actually through the advice I was giving about changing your assignments. So today's assignments should no longer look like yesterday's assignments where they just generate an output. Now they need to generate an output and then do something with it, right? So I think today's college students can do something with it. They can analyze it. They can improve it. They can find its weaknesses. They can expand it, etc. 10 years from now, where the students who have gone through most of their primary and secondary education before they get to our colleges, where they've had AI tools their whole time, where and I don't know what's happening in the K through 12 world, but if they're giving assignments like take this essay at home and write it, then the
Mm-hmm.
students are probably just going to be generating outputs without doing any of the actual fundamentals and won't know how to improve it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is systemic, not just something for us at the college level, that we're going to be inheriting students who might have problems doing fundamentals. And at that point, this is where I'm split. Like part of me thinks that's just the nature of the future. We'll stop caring about not having those skills anymore, right?
Right.
So, you go back a generation or two and people would say like, I don't understand you kids with your cars. Like, you don't know how to fix anything. I'd pull over the side of the road and get my tools out and fix it. Nobody knows how to do that anymore
Mm-hmm.
because the society and the technology have moved on and we don't need to.
Right.
So part of me thinks that might be what writing actually looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So, departments of English might become more departments of thinking than departments of writing.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's also part of me, uncertain. I've not seen the movie Idiocracy yet, but I've been told that this is the right metaphor for it. That
Right.
that now we're surrounded by people who can't do very basic thinking and very basic things, and the limits of our abilities will be what large language models can do, what AI
Mm-hmm.
can do. That's a lot more dystopic, and I don't like thinking that way. But there are moments I think it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a fan of that movie. You should definitely watch it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about if you think that there are any are can AI promote integrity? Because we're talking about integrity and ethics. Is there any way, rather than all the things that we think about that it will undermine integrity, how can it promote integrity among students?
So every challenge is also an opportunity. Every crisis is an opportunity. This is a crisis for writing, but the opportunity is, I think, that it's forcing our hand to finally have deep and sustained conversations about integrity with students. I think a lot of the academy has left it to be cursory, or it's on the syllabus, or it's somebody else's job to teach them about cheating is actually cheating yourself. I think that one of the tools that we have left to us is switching how we talk to students about academic integrity. The have a fully thought through thought experiment with students about the workplace of the future. Let's say they get away with faking all of their assignments all through college, right? Let's say they take all online classes and they just copy paste their Canvas quizzes into ChatGPT and they get the answers, which it can do, by the way, if it's multiple choice. Mm-hmm. Let's say they do that and they never get caught, and they fake all of their essays and they never get caught. That in that thought experiment, we need them to understand that they're not going to be able to keep that job. A lot of students believe that the purpose of college is the piece of paper, the diploma. I'm going to get the skills I need on the job. Employers know better. Professors know better, but we can't convince the students of that. And so we've had this uneasy détente for a while where we just sort of pretend that they're maximizing their learning. But I think this now, that thought experiment where the student isn't going to be able to keep that job because they can't do anything other than just what ChatGPT can do. And I can pay, this guy minimum wage to do it instead of you to do it.
Right.
So we need to have those conversations in every, honestly, I think it needs to be not only in every semester, in every class, but probably every time before there's an assessment of some sort, whether it's an essay or a test, where you are paying these thousands of dollars to just do this weird transaction to get the piece of paper, and you're not going to be able to keep a job. You're wasting your time.
Yeah.
So we almost need to change the conversation with students to be less about grades and more about like it really means getting all the frontline faculty focused on career readiness.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is not an automatic thing for all faculty. Some faculty feel that, we do traditional liberal arts things, and that's more vocational school that you're talking about there, and that's not the life of the mind. So there's some tension there that we haven't worked through yet.
Yeah. There's a lot of tension. Okay, well, we're kind of running out of time, so I definitely want to get to the question about biases in AI algorithms. I think it's something that, although it's not necessarily at the forefront of, every classroom, something that educators can help students understand. Maybe the biases that might affect grading or assessment, or just the biases in general that we see and have seen in generative AI.
One of the reasons AI was not taken seriously by many faculty at the beginning of all of this, so early 2023, was that they went and experimented with it a little bit, and also read news articles that had gone viral about the AI sort of going haywire. So early versions of ChatGPT were trained on large parts of the internet, the open internet, Wikipedia, and of all things, Reddit. So there were stories about ChatGPT getting angry at the person that was trying to have a conversation with it, probably because it was doing what it was trained on. That's what happens in Reddit, is the baser humanity comes out. Again, with the black box, we don't know for sure that Reddit has been expunged from ChatGPT's training. They don't tell us what these things are trained on. Most of them don't. A couple of the ones have had a standard, and you can see what those are trained on. But unless they're trained on just things like PubMed and the truly trustworthy articles, although a minute ago I was talking about journals that have AI language in them, so that's starting to be in there too. But unless they've been trained on those, then they've been trained on humans who have ideas, they have biases, they have agendas, they have ideologies. You cannot convince me at this point that MSNBC News and Fox News approach the same story with, the same, what's the right word? Impartiality. They all have a slant of some sort.
Right.
And so if that writing is what gets absorbed, then and then trained on, then some version of that might make it into the AI output that comes. And here's where it gets really bad. The term for it is generative inbreeding, where AI of the future gets trained on AI output of today, which is now sort of a second layer of abstraction from a bias that you can't even tell was a bias because it came from the AI most recently, even though it came from a human before that. So these are biases in everything about politics, about society, about the differences between peoples of different types, of genders. You name it, any controversy, there's bias in it.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be really hard to. So this is one of the reasons people continue to mention scan AI output for bias, because it's. So let's make this not about language here for just a second. Let's make it about programming code again, right? If it has a bias toward a certain kind of structure, then as a programmer who's using AI in your life as a future, you want to know and be on the lookout for that kind of structure is not actually going to be a scalable structure for the type of coding that you're doing right now. So in other words, it's that much in the weeds of getting to recognize how AI has bias in coding as well.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, this means that faculty need to continue not only learning all of the different AIs, but then trying to apply them to the topics that we're talking about right now. You have to almost re-prep for your course before every semester just to see how AI changes all of these equations.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of work. And, a lot of us have established a routine and gotten by with the workload that we have because we have a prep in the can, and I don't need to touch that anymore. And that's just the class that I teach every time I teach it. But now every semester is different.
It's almost like maybe we need like an extra session at every convocation at the very beginning of every year. These are the things that have changed. These are the things that you need that are irrelevant, that you shouldn't use anymore. That these are the things that you need to be aware of. And that we just have to have that, just to kind of across the board for all faculty.
Yeah, maybe we should put a section on that in next year's book giveaway at the AI conference.
How do you think students should be a part of this conversation, just in general? Because we had some students in our first episode, some of their voices here at FSCJ. Should they be playing a role in, kind of shaping whatever policies we create for our classrooms?
As much as possible, yeah. So the range of faculty reactions includes faculty who are frustrated, fearful, and mistrustful of students, who sort of automatically believe that students will cheat if given the chance. Although that data says half of them will, it also says that half of them won't. And so faculty need to recognize that a lot of students are fearful about AI. They're worried about there being no jobs available because, a job that was done by 10 humans can now be done by 1 human and AI. And that fear is not totally misplaced, actually. And so I think students and letting faculty understand that would help those faculty on the fence understand that the real need at college level here is to lean into AI, not to show them how to use it, to be value added to the AI output, rather than trying to fight it and just have these fundamental skills. Because the fundamental skills, right? So the mechanic who goes around repairing 1950s cars cannot compete on 2020s cars with the mechanic who knows the 2020 stuff that's aided by a computer. Like the fundamentals alone are outdated. What we have to figure out is how much of the fundamentals still need to be taught. Because we don't want this to become purely vocational, to use that word again, where they just know how to manipulate things with AI, but they don't understand anything about critical thinking at large. So we really need to focus on what thinking looks like and not lose sight of that, and make sure that we're creating assignments and face-to-face interactions that hone in on the critical thinking. I think it's an opportunity to do more flipped classrooms, where they do some reading at home, but then more of the thinking part happens in the face-to-face environment rather than transmitting information.
Yeah, I think that social aspect, socializing within a learning context is so important. And that was something I heard over and over again at a lot of different presentations. I thought that was an important piece of this, especially with Flower Darby at the end. Her keynote was wonderful.
Thank you.
Having the emotion being part of the learning process is so motivating for students. And so, yeah, you tend to lose that sometimes when we have all these, fancy new technologies that we can use in the classroom. To kind of finish up, and you've already given me some wonderful proactive steps that institutions can make, but any final thoughts about what institutions can do, what steps they can take now to prepare for challenges in the future? I know that you don't have a crystal ball, but what should we be doing now for integrity in the institution and among our students with this technology?
So there's a definite wrong answer there. I think institutions doing nothing at all are at danger. They're at danger that their degree will be devalued in the future because the students will not have learned much. So whether that happens from a top-down creation of a committee, a task force, I've heard places like University of Florida has an AI czar. I don't think they call him that, but someone who sort of knows everything that's going on with teaching and learning AI, but also the research AI and in faculty life, all of those things. That's a top-down way. You can do a bottom-up way as well, where, honestly, out of our teaching center, no one asked us to do this. We just started creating training for faculty on AI fluency. And we created a multi-week course. They don't get paid for it or anything. It's just 2 hours a week, but we have 50 people signing up for it every time. Just really excited for the deep dive.
Yeah.
How do I learn more about AI? Because they recognize. So AI fluency for faculty, that's one thing. AI fluency for students is another thing that institutions, I think, need to be doing. And some mechanism, again, whether it comes from on high or bubbles up from a champion, some mechanism for ongoing, continuous conversation, something like monthly meetings on Zoom or Teams, where you just talk about what has changed in the AI world in the last month. There has not been a month yet where we didn't have a lot to talk about. Mm-hmm. New case law that has come out, or a new law that has been written, or entity has been sued. 3 of the technologies have upgraded in the meantime. And so just staying current on all of that is a monthly, hourly meeting by itself.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot. All right. So anything else you want to add about like the future of teaching and learning with AI conference, or how to get your books?
So we mentioned them as books, and one thing we haven't said out loud is that they are open source books. So they are something that you can simply look up through your search engine of choice without naming a company. ChatGPT assignments to use in your classroom today, or AI hacks for educators, or even just UCF Kevin Yee books, and you'll find the links to them there. So the full PDF is available through our open repository. They are open source, so people can use them as readings in their own environments, classrooms, trainings, whatever. All of that is available. So those people who did attend the conferences in person got a physical copy of the book, but we're not selling that. That is just printed as as swag for the conference.
Okay. And I will add the link to that in this podcast episode. So
excellent. Thank you.
What about the next conference? Has that been scheduled yet?
So we did have a schedule that is in the process of shifting to be even earlier in the summer. So I'm not ready to give you dates now, but it will be much earlier in the summer period, probably late May, and it will take place at the same hotel you were at this time, the DoubleTree near Universal. It'll probably grow by a few hundred people, which will put us at bursting. And so for 2026, we are already looking at other venues that can hold an even larger number. So there are only a few conferences I attend with 1,200 to 1,500 people, but we're going to be that size in just a couple of years.
Wow. Wonderful. Okay. Any last thoughts?
Just want to express my thanks again for the opportunity. This is always fun stuff for me to talk about. And, this is not something we have the answers to. Hopefully that's being communicated correctly, that we have partial guesses and suggestions to pursue without knowing for sure what's going to work. And I think there's a degree of uncertainty for all of us on what the future brings. But I know for sure the one thing that's not going to work is head in the sand. Like the tool is here, the tool is not going away. The tools are not going away, and education has to shift. There's just no doubt about it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for sharing your experience, the knowledge. Thank you for the conference. I know that I met so many people, did a lot of networking there. Some of them are going to be on the show. So, so that concludes our episode today. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Reach out to us. Check out the link. You can find the books. They are open source books. And we'll have a link to the conference as well. Let us know what you'd like to discuss when it comes to AI in education. Join me next time. I'll be speaking to Dr. Laura Duman about equity and accessibility in the age of AI in colleges. So thanks so much for tuning in to AI Goes to College, and thank you for joining us, Dr. Yi.
Thank you.